Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Keys to AWS Optimization, the show where we share stories, concepts, and solutions to help you unlock your spend on AWS. And today we've got a really special guest, Deepa, joining us from New York. How's your day going, Deepa?
Hi, good day, going great. Yeah, right, start of the day.
Awesome. We're really excited to have you here today, but we have to ask everybody before we get too far into it. Are you having a frugal week or are you having a spendy week?
Frugal week.
Frugal week. Tell me
Yep,
why.
I've been frugal with complaints this week, which is good. It's Thursday, over the hump, and I've been extremely positive and productive, and I complain less. So, yeah.
I love that.
Mhm.
I love complaining personally, so
It's a therapy. It's very
it's
underrated.
therapy. It's
Yeah.
absolutely therapy. I've been having a frugal week too. Mine is a little bit, I would say, less positive though. It's just time for me to complain some more. It's been really hot in Seattle, and we only have one little portable air conditioner, so I've been hiding in my one little air conditioning room and doing that all week. And it's a lot harder to spend money when you're hiding in your house. So pretty frugal for me. um,
On the other hand, you could actually head to the mall where you'll have air conditioner and actually be spendy and change it if you want.
Yeah, you're right about that. I would have to like enter the no zone, which is outside of my AC room, to my vehicle. So we're staying in. We've got some folks in the chat. Everybody, please go ahead and share if you've had a frugal week or a spendy week, or if you're in the Pacific Northwest and are currently suffering from the heat like me. But enough about that. Oh, it looks like Northeast Penny has natural air conditioning right now. Well, I'm jealous of you for that, cosplayer,
For
and thank
real,
you for
for
trying
real. We're having really nice fall weather.
it. Oof. Do you guys have fall colors yet? Or no?
Not yet. New York
Okay.
gets it a little late.
Coming up, coming up. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for being here today, Deepa. I'm gonna ask. I know you haven't been on the show before. Can you give everybody a quick overview of who you are and a little 1 minute origin story about how you got here and how you're related to all this lovely optimization and AWS cost stuff?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Deepa Krishnan, Product Manager of Cost and Usage Report, also known as CUR. I've been with AWS over 3 years in this role, a little less than a year. CUR is a comprehensive reporting system that provides finance, technical, business stakeholders detailed information about your AWS resource usage and costs. In simple terms, it's the most detailed source of AWS cost and usage data, providing line item details for all AWS services used in your account. I love my product, and my goal is to make our users love it.
I will say, I think you're doing a really good job of that. I printed off, I think, 1,000 I Heart the Curve stickers for FinOpsX, and they were the first sticker that we ran out of. So we definitely have a lot of fans of the Cur. I myself am a big fan of the cost and usage report and have been for
Wouldn't
a
it be
long
nice
time.
to take credit for all that to myself? And I have very, very little role to play, but yeah, really appreciate that. Thank you, Savannah.
Yeah. Yeah, but you're owning it now. So we're excited to have you here. And I know you know a lot more about AWS's like backend billing system than most. So excited to have you on the show. For viewers that haven't been on the show too much before or a little bit newer to the space, I know you mentioned that the cost and usage report is kind of the most granular and the most detailed billing artifact that AWS has. Can you tell me a little bit about how you've seen customers use it or like some of the feedback that you get from customers about when they use the cost and usage report?
So many customers come and tell me that they think of CUR as their source of truth. Uh, so we always say, like, there is this invoice, yes, we are part of billing, and you get the invoice that is the source of truth, but the level of granularity CUR provides is what many customers that use it need, because of which they use it as source of truth. Uh, it answers a lot of questions for them in the most granular way. And with CUR 2.0, there is opportunity to actually use it differently than they used legacy CUR before. So some of the customers that made the switch have given really good positive feedback on some of the things they're able to do with CUR 2.0.
Awesome. So if I'm a customer and I'm used to Cost Explorer, because I know we've got like a lot of engineers who tune in and are a little bit outside of the FinOps persona, how do CUR and Cost Explorer interact? What should I know about how those two products are connected or not connected?
The two are connected in the sense that they both get the data from the exact same resource. So they should always match. Cost Explorer's prettier. I'm giving it compliments because it's not my product. It has a lot of visual elements to it, and does a lot more things. You know, when you can actually see visually what the graphs look like, and you can drill it down. It's very different. Whereas CUR is a data product. You take it and then you build on top of it. Um, so they serve different purpose, but the source for both are the same. So they should match. CUR and Cost Explorer don't interact per se because they're two ends of the same source.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think when I work with customers and what I've seen a lot is we think about crawl, walk, run often in like your FinOps journey or any customer maturity journey on AWS. Like, what are you doing when you're first getting started versus walking versus running? And not to say that Cost Explorer like doesn't have a place in every stage, but I think when I'm scoping out like which tool somebody's using or which tool they're most excited about, rather, usually I see people in like the walk stage are
Mhm.
really getting a hang of Cost Explorer and using that heavily. And then the CUR is when we've kind of moved on to that run stage. We want that deeper level of granularity, and you want to build on top of it and customize it a little bit and get down to the resource level, perhaps.
Right. It also has the, like you said, resource of granularity and split cost allocation, all of that. So as people get more mature in the FinOps journey, they use CUR and enable all these things like resource ID and SCAD. But yeah, what you're saying makes total sense.
And we've also got, I think this is a really common sentiment. Cost layer, I still use Cost Explorer despite having four other FinOps tools. It's something that I see super often, and like I'm in Cost Explorer every day as well. It's just at your fingertips, very easy to use in the console, easy to get started on, especially if you're more in the engineering world. It's an easy
Mhm.
place to start. But I personally will like take a vibe check in Cost Explorer and get a little bit closer to what I want, and then go into the CUR and start querying and start pulling out some of that deeper information.
Right. I use Cost Explorer myself if I have to look at something quickly. And I've heard customers say very often that if I have to really quickly troubleshoot something, Cost Explorer is where we go. But we really
Mm-hmm.
need to deep dive, we go to CUR. So it seems like they serve different purpose, which is great. That's our goal.
Yep, absolutely. So I know we did want to do a little demo for folks who might not be as familiar with some of like the admin controls. So let me pull up my screen real quick and we'll show you where to find your CUR and how to see if you have one and which one you have. All right, there we go. So I'm logged into Billing and Cost Management Console. I think Deepa and I have seen this screen hundreds, if not thousands of times in our lives. But it lives down in this cost and usage analysis section, and it's in data exports. So, Deepa, tell me a little bit about the data exports name.
The name?
Yeah.
That's an interesting question. Okay, so we take the data and export it to your S3 bucket. So that's where the name data exports come from. Um, a lot of people use data exports to mean something else because if you're used to legacy CUR and all of that, but right now we want to keep it simple. Data exports is where everything lives, everything that we export to your S3 bucket.
Awesome. Cool, cool. Yeah, I remember, what was it, like 2 years ago when we changed the nomenclature, and I
Yeah.
got a bunch of questions the next day being like, where did my CUR menu go? And it's like, it's the same place. Looks the same. It's just a different name. As we can see, I've got one test CUR in here. If you already have an AWS account, you'll be able to go in and see any cost and usage reports that you already have. We'll get that status check of healthy versus undelivered, right? And I can see I've got a standard data export with using CUR 2.0 right there. I can click into here and see all of my configurations as well. And I'm sure everybody with eagle eyes has noticed that orange create button on the other screen as well. So if you've already got a CUR, or if you don't know if you have a CUR, this is a really good way to go check. It's a good way to get just a sense check on what's in here. I can see that I've got resource IDs included in mine. And what that means is it is going to give me granularity down to the resource level every hour, because I have hourly selected. So this is one of kind of the deeper layers of CUR that you can go, because I want the most granularity that I can possibly get in this report that I've configured.
I want to add something as you
Mm-hmm.
talk about the granularity. I have had some people ask me whether they have to check hourly if they want to get uh, CUR 3 times a day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's not the frequency, it's the granularity.
Mm-hmm.
So you could be having the granularity as daily and still be getting the CUR at the same frequency. So that seems to throw some people off. I just thought I should mention that here.
Yeah, that's a really good call out. It's also, I think, a good segue into some of like the secrets and how the CUR is created that we wanted to talk through. Before we get into that, we do have a couple questions in the chat that I want to pull up, and
Mhm.
let me go back out to the homepage before I pull this guy up. So Pete asks, the CUR to email that was done a couple of weeks ago, is it a prereq to have CUR legacy or CUR 2.0 to send cost optimization recommendations from Cost Optimization Hub? So I'm not 100% sure which email he's referencing here, but I think we can pretty safely answer the second one with a very definite demo. So Deepa, as you mentioned, data exports is essentially what we've renamed that section, because that's where all of our exports live. And if we go ahead and click create here, you'll see that the first thing that it gives you is kind of an option of what we're exporting. And when we scroll down here a little bit, you can see the data table content settings, and that's where you would go ahead and choose Cost Optimization Hub, which just flashed away. Oh, there we go.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's because I don't have the right role on this. Yeah. So if you aren't like my demo account role and you do have a service link role that allows you to do that, you won't get that error. But hopefully this answers your question a little bit. It is kind of the aggregator of where all of these export features for different data sets live. So the COH recommendations and the CUR are both configured through the same menu. They're different data sets. Is there anything I missed there, Deepa?
No, they're different tables, they're different data sets. Yeah, you're right. It comes under the standard export. That also leads to another question I get asked about the export limit on CUR 2.0. So if you select standard CUR, like standard export, like 7 as selected, you would come here and then you'd see four different types, four different types of reports: CUR 2.0, Cost Optimization Hub, Focus, and Carbon Emissions. So you can, CUR 2.0 has maximum of 5 exports that you can set up. You can have 5 different CUR 2.0 reports, 2 for cost optimization, 2 for focus, 2 for carbon emissions. Uh, so that's about how many you can create. That's what, 5 plus, yeah, 11 exports.
Got it.
That's what we have. Yeah, anything over that, that's going to be a little too much. And we've seen most of the use cases, they kind of fit in with this limit that we went for so far.
Um, so I guess, Deepa, what are some use cases that you've seen where people have like a really large number of cost and usage
Mhm.
reports configured at once? When would a customer want to do that?
So with CUR 2.0, I've seen people set up daily, monthly, hourly granularity, and then whichever one they use the most, and which is typically hourly, but in some with some customers it's been daily as well. And then they enable resource ID and SCAD with that. So 5 has served their purpose, and that's the most I've seen someone set up.
All right, awesome. And timely, how many CURs should I have?
I mean, technically one.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
yeah, there's
I've
no right
seen,
answer to that.
yeah, I mean, like a lot of things in the FinOps space, right? Like it really depends on what your business needs. what I do see customers do often is if they have any sort of like third-party visualization software or work with an AWS partner, often they'll have one cost and usage report configured for the partner or that vendor to use, and then one that they configure for their internal use as well. That's pretty common, but ultimately, as long as you're using all your CURs, I think you're probably okay. The point where I have a problem is if you're not using them and you've got like 10 in there and they're just taking up space and hopefully aren't set to give me a new copy every time, because that'll definitely
Increase the S3 job.
definitely yeah, increase that S3 data size for sure. But yeah, I think one's great. If you've got a reason to have more, that's great as well. um, Deepa, I know you mentioned that the hourly granularity selection doesn't mean you're going to get a CUR every hour. And I think
Right.
one of the questions that we get asked a lot, or that I get asked a lot, and also have asked a lot, is why does it take so long to get this CUR data? So can you tell us a little bit about like what goes into making the CUR?
Yeah. So when a usage occurs for a service, let's assume it's EC2. Um, so you spin up an instance that, and then you have resource level granularity, right? You use it for how many hours? So let's just say you use it for 1 hour.
Mhm.
So EC2 needs to capture that usage, meter it, and then send it to the teams that would consume. So we need to take that data and then see what kind of discounts you have. Uh, do you have savings plan? Does that apply? Right. So and then compute the cost for that 1 hour, and then send it where downstream, like to CUR, where we put them all together and make sure it is accurate. So from the time you use to the time it gets displayed, it takes a bit, and we do it across all regions, all services you use, and all of that, right? So to aggregate, it takes a bit, and that is why from the time you use, so some services are fast, some
Mhm.
services take long because of the nature of the service. uh, so we'll have to aggregate them before we present it as part of CUR. So that's why it takes long. Again, whether it takes long or doesn't take long really depends on your usage, what services you use, how much you use, how often you use, where do you use, how do you use, all of that. So there is no straight answer to it takes X hours for it to get from point A to point B. It is aggregating at the service level, and then applying all the computation, or the savings plan, RI, all of those things that you have on top of it, and then surface it in CUR in the format that you want it surfaced.
Yeah. Okay. So from the moment I turn on an instance, basically EC2 is responsible for capturing that metering data, right? And then
Hmm.
they have to, does EC2 compute their RN savings plan application, or
No,
is that
they
you
don't.
guys? Okay,
It's downstream towards billing. Is billing what is where all this is done. The computation, the cost computation is done.
awesome. Okay. So we've got a couple layers there for sure in terms of metering and then billing. If any of the folks out there are familiar with some of the metadata that we get in the CUR about an EC2 instance that's run as well, you'll probably recall that we have a public on-demand cost column. So depending on kind of the service that you're using and whether or not an RI savings plan applied, like that's still data that we have to think about and make sure is put in there. Um, and as Deepa mentioned, like we're computing these files over a very large system. If the customer is only running one EC2 instance for the entire billing family that they've got, one very optimized, maybe. Uh, Definitely a low dollar bill anyway. But that would be a lot faster than a kind of very large organization with a lot of different usage and a lot of different services and linked accounts, since all of that needs to be kind of aggregated together and presented in a way that is capturable and processable. Deepa, any are there any things that you've seen that like disproportionately will make a customer's CUR really big?
So in CUR 2.0, you have this ability to deselect the columns that you don't need, right?
Mhm.
Um, we try to give as much details or as much data as possible, so it's exhaustive, and then you decide what you want, right? That's why we came up with CUR 2.0, where you can deselect the columns that you don't need. Some customers have said this column is never populated for me. Why do you have it?
Mm.
Um, it can be deselected to make the size smaller, right? If you don't think you'd use it. I think with legacy, if you don't use it, it won't even be present for you. In
Mhm.
CUR 2.0, it'll be present. We want you to make the decision. So we have it this way. So that's one thing people could do. Most people want resource ID level granularity. If you don't
Mhm.
want that, or if you don't think you'll use SCAD applies to you, you can remove those to make it more manageable.
Yeah. I think definitely the tags are a big one that I've seen. Love that the cost allocation tags are nested into one column and the CUR 2.0 big upgrade. Absolutely. Cool guy, Trav. Completely agree. I've seen a couple situations where like a customer who's newer to AWS is thinking about really getting a little deeper with FinOps for the first time, goes into that cost allocation tags like menu and enables every
Hmm.
tag that they have for cost allocation and just blows up their CUR size because
Right.
it's just suddenly everything
We
there.
Exactly. We saw which ones have this capacity or the propensity to actually grow. And, these tags are one, cost category is one, product is another, right? So we put these on as maps. Same thing with discount, right? We could come up with different ways to discount. So we don't want to limit ourselves. So we put those as map columns. That's the idea behind map. And customers seem to like that.
Yeah, I mean, when I started, we didn't have savings plans. So that's always evolving. And I think bundled discounts are newer as well. The like not gateway one that I'll see if I can dig up some documentation for it. But I know that was one of the newer ads as well. Back
Right.
back in my day, it was only RI volume discount. So, all right. Oh, this is also a common one. When can we know that we have complete data for usage or the most up to date cost information? 24 hours.
That is a very, very good question. So like we send CUR to your S3 3 times a day, right? And for your usage, the cost and the metering data and the cost data keeps coming in as you use more, right? So it is continuously coming like for the month, and we stop, we aggregate, drop it, and then we stop, aggregate, drop it, right? Every 8 hours. That's what we do. Doesn't mean it stops coming to us, right? So we draw a line and then say, okay, we will send the data and then chunk rest of that together, which is also why we have it cumulative. uh, when it is complete, when a service is done sending usage data for a given hour is very hard thing to know, even for the service team that is actually sending the data. Say if EC2 host is down somewhere and then some other host picks up, even EC2 as a team wouldn't know until later. But there'll be no interruption for the customer, but then the data will be coming from somewhere. So these are things that happen. We just can't control it, right? So the data keeps coming in, and when it becomes complete is something we cannot say for sure. Also, if you make a savings plan purchase mid-month or you have enterprise support, these are things that happen outside, so that also impacts how the data is shown on CUR. So it is very hard for us to say that, yeah, this hour this is 100% complete, because what if you made a purchase right after? So are we supposed to include that, not include that? If you have, marketplace hasn't sent the data, so should we exclude and then say it's complete, or include? Like, what is the definition of that? That's always a question, right? That's why it's very hard to say when it is complete. What we maintain is that if your invoice is issued, that's when you can consider a CUR complete for that month. There should be very, very minimal change after that, unless there's bill adjustments, there's some credit card applied, all of that. Those are all extraneous circumstances. But for the most part, If you see invoice ID populated, that's when it can be considered complete. Until then, the everyday CUR that you get, we can only say it gets close to complete, not really complete, right? You can hear you, Savannah?
Try it now. Am I back?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
you're
know
back.
what's up. My laptop has suddenly decided that my webcam is a microphone, that it just wants to select randomly, which is not correct. Um, Regardless, one thing that one example that you mentioned is the savings plan purchase. I think maybe like a stronger nuance to that is now we have a 7-day savings plan return window to help just in case somebody kind of makes an accidental purchase or overcovers themselves. So let's say that you accidentally purchase $20 an hour savings plan commit and you should have purchased a $5 an hour, but you don't notice for 6 days. Those 6 days, when we're computing your CUR, we're going to assume that that savings plan exists and you're going to get savings plan coverage, usage, presentation for that savings plan. If on the 6th day you take a look at your utilization and you go, oh, that's not actually what I wanted to do, and you go into the savings plan kind of menu and click return, it's going to return that savings plan effective to the date that it was purchased. And as soon as you make that change, the CUR will kind of recompute to understanding that the savings plan no longer exists. So that's one scenario where you might see kind of like a larger fluctuation in differences within your cost and usage data throughout the month. As long as it's kind of within the same month and you're returning that savings plan, like you could see a pretty decent change due to that savings plan return. Generally speaking, though, I agree with Costler. Like 24 to 48 hours is what I usually say. The other thing to keep in mind is that the like broader AWS billing cycle also can impact the speed here. So if you think about the very end of the month when all of our systems are computing bills and generating those invoices for every single AWS account out there, it tends to get a little bit slower, a little bit more backed up. So just keep that in mind when we're closing a month as well. All right. Ooh, this is a good one. If I do CUR 2.0, how far back can I get backfilled?
Uh, Typically, 36 months is how far back you can go. Yeah, that's right.
Costlayers, got it. Yeah, definitely reach out to support in those cases. You can create an account and billing support ticket and request a backfill. That's something that either the support engineer or somebody on Deepa's team can take a look at. And I think that that's also a pretty common question that we've been getting for folks,
Right.
especially if they are moving over to CUR 2.0 or using like a new CUR format. So if they're including resource IDs for the first time or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Sorry, going through the chat here. Does CUR 2.0 also contain cost optimization recommendations?
It's a separate report in itself. Are you asking if it is part of CUR 2.0? It is not, because it serves a different purpose.
Yep. Different data schema. You can certainly use CUR 2.0 data to analyze your usage and come up with your own cost optimization recommendations, though. So we always say that like the data is foundational to understanding what's out there and what can be optimized. Awesome. Okay. Okay, this is a good one, hot topic. I know with CUR 2.0, like we've got a good amount of folks who are kind of testing the waters and moving to it. Costler says you should enable CUR v2 so it starts collecting data. Even if you plan to cut over way out in the future, be proactive looking forward. Deepa, can you talk a little bit about like some of the customer testing and migration steps that you've seen with these
Yeah,
two reports?
I think Osler really got it. Yeah, you can set it up so it starts collecting data, because sometimes, so there are I have to give you an example. Somebody requested backfill for 36 months when the account
Mhm.
was only like 18 months old, right? So
Mm,
they got a
okay.
support ticket, and then they're like, why is it going back and forth? Because you're like, oh, we don't have 36-month data, we have only 18-month data. So that added delay. So I'm just, the reason I said typically 36 months is because if you have data for 36 months for this account, that's what you can get. And like Osler mentioned, it's good to set it up so your data is collected. And then whenever you're ready to switch over, you'll always be able to get the data.
Yeah,
Like
I
it's
think
1 year down the line, 2 years down the line, doesn't matter. Yeah.
sorry
Sorry.
there. Oh no. Uh, I was just going to say I see a lot of folks testing them in tandem too, where like as you mentioned, it's possible to have multiple custom usage reports. Another like really good use case for having multiple is if you have like one without resource IDs and one with resource IDs in both their legacy, and you've created two of the same format within CUR 2.0 and are essentially like mapping back and forth between, seeing how the data looks in the newer format and kind of working on that process.
Yeah.
Happy to be here. We're happy you're here too.
Mhm.
With CUR 2.0 in general, I know it's been around for a little while. I think a lot of the questions that we've been getting are around like which data export is right for me.
Mhm.
How do these interplay? Can we talk a little bit about essentially like CUR versus CUR 2.0
Yeah.
versus SCAD, what people should use when, or like what your ideal vision is there as somebody
Yeah.
who's familiar with all these?
Let's talk about CUR 2.0 on legacy, because I can talk
Perfect.
about that.
Yeah, let's do it.
uh, so, when do people legacy obviously many of our customers use legacy CUR, right? There are
Mhm.
limitations, so there are things that we made better with CUR 2.0, especially the map column is something that people really appreciate for the, but I've also heard customers say that I get most of it in legacy
Mhm.
CUR. And what is it that CUR 2.0 is providing if you're not really leveraging the benefits it has today? One of the things we want to do is, and people often ask, what is the date when you're going to deprecate legacy? Because the moment you call something legacy,
Mhm.
you know it has an expiry date on it. We
Mhm.
really want customers to do it on their terms. Not going to force customers to migrate by a date. At the same time, CUR 2.0 is our version, is the version that we work with as we introduce new capabilities. So many new capabilities that are being worked on now will be available on CUR 2.0 only for customers. So if you are already leveraging CUR 2.0, great. If you want to move in the future, set it up today, start playing around, and then you can move. But as new features become available, we want to add them in CUR 2.0 only.
Okay.
This is consider this like a period where we want to make sure customers are getting used to it from legacy. They know how this works, they can see the benefits. So we want to make the experience the same in both for the most part. And then in the future, we want to develop CUR 2.0 further.
Awesome. Cool. So those new features you're working on, we gotta
Yeah.
keep an eye on the CUR 2.0 space, I suppose. Oh, this is an interesting one. That I think ties into CUR 2.0 and like some of the handling for it that's better. How does AWS decide to add a new column to the CUR?
I'm assuming you're talking about CUR 2.0 here,
I
or is it
like either
legacy?
or, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah. So a new capability that we introduced, for example, like when savings plan got introduced, or I got introduced, right? So we add a new column because that existing columns is not going to give the customers what they need out of this capability. So that's when we decide, if we think our first option is, how do we not add columns? Like, can existing columns actually serve the purpose? If that's not the case, then we have to add a column. That's how we go about it. So that's how we are thinking of adding new columns. And more so with CUR 2.0, we want to make sure adding these new columns is not becoming a breaking change. That's where it becomes very important to have that capability where you can select or deselect columns. If you're not ready to consume the column, deselect it, right? In CUR 2.0, you can do that. Even if you use a capability, if you're not ready to use the column, we can deselect it and then select it again when you're ready. So it gives you that flexibility. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, a little bit. I think like the other thing that might be helpful here is so we have like a good amount of different prefixes in CUR columns. There's like line item, so like
Yeah,
line item type, line item usage type, and then we have product name, and kind of all the product columns, and then reservation.
yeah,
Can you talk a little bit about like where each of those come from
sure.
and what level of influence like you as the PM might have on one versus
Yeah.
the other?
Yeah, in legacy, this question is more pertinent in legacy, right? Even in legacy CUR, every report contains identity, bill, and line item columns for sure. All the other columns in your report will appear only if your monthly AWS usage generates data to populate these columns, right?
Mhm.
And that question of why do you even have those columns? Whereas in CUR 2.0, we are intentionally making it easy for you to understand, right? If you want to deselect all product related columns, go ahead, do this. So
Mhm.
we have these 11 column groups: bill, cost category, discount, line item, saving
Mhm.
plan, reservation, all these to give a sense of, okay, if I'm using reservation like RI, here are the columns that would have it, so let me add it back. Or I'm not going to use RI, so I'm going to deselect it. So it gives you that option. It's just easy to read and choose which columns come under that. If you don't use that capability, which columns you can deselect. So that's why we have these column groups.
Mhm.
It makes more sense in CUR 2.0 for that reason.
Got it.
And to
Um,
go back to your question of what is used when,
mhm.
uh, we are assuming it's a little self-explanatory. If you use cost categories, right, it
Yep.
it comes from what you set up. Um, Column group billing is more about when it starts, when it ends, and all of that. It's all related to billing. Line item is if it's very resource level, right? So that's when it is used. Um, what's the other one? Pricing also
Yep.
relates to all those columns. It comes from a different system. So think of these column groups as getting data from different systems and aggregating and making it easy for you to select and deselect and cut to data.
Awesome. Yeah, I think if a customer is hesitant to migrate, what's one feature in CUR 2.0 you tell them they can't live without? I think what you described is like a big one, especially for customers that maybe are like more sensitive about data size or are trying out a new tagging strategy or trying out cost categories or like testing with a bunch of new products that have a large volume of new CUR columns that they could introduce when you start using them. It gives you the ability to like toggle how much makes it into that like inevitable data pipeline. It also gives you the ability to keep your CUR a little bit more like static and consistent throughout any of those workload changes. Anything else you'd highlight or mention there, Deepa?
I think you covered that perfectly.
The other question that I get asked a lot, and I think like is really common when you first pull like a CUR excerpt or like the first 10 lines of a CUR, you're like, dang, there's a lot of blank stuff in here.
Yeah,
And a lot of the column names are a little bit self-explanatory when you like look a little closer. So like network performance, right, is one that I always reference. If you're pulling like an S3 line, you're not going to have network performance necessarily there. But somewhere within the cost and usage report, as Deepa mentioned, like that column exists in legacy CUR because somewhere something has populated it. So if you're really only looking for usage that's related to a couple specific services, or if you want to create like a custom, very like lightweight cost and usage report, that's another way that you can kind of think about using that column select and unselect.
exactly. I like the term lightweight. Yeah.
Lighter weight. As lightweight as we could get with
Exactly.
resource level
Yeah,
granularity.
lightweight and CUR. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Um, Anything else that you want to mention about essentially like how different service teams pass you guys data and how that looks different with legacy CUR versus CUR 2.0?
So in legacy CUR, when you set the preference, you're pretty much when you set the preference, it's pretty much generated. The a view for the preference is created, and a CUR is generated and exported to you. Whereas in CUR 2.0, we are holding it. We are taking your preferences, your configuration, getting the data according to that, taking data from all the services, just like legacy CUR. That's not different. That part is not different. We are holding it for you to make your selection deselection.
Mhm.
That's the biggest difference here. We're holding it for you, and then once you made that, that's when, and then you confirm that's how you want your report to be, that's when it starts getting delivered. So that holding in the middle to give you the ability to select and deselect columns is the biggest change.
Awesome. I've got another one in here that I think relates a little bit to what you've just said as well. What's the cost difference if I upgrade from Legacy CUR to CUR 2.0? Uh,
There shouldn't be a cost difference
mhm.
at all. Should I say at all? There
Also,
shouldn't be a
what
cost
about
difference.
with size as well? Like, what's the size difference? Because I've gotten that question a couple times too. Like, is CUR 2.0 going to be larger? And
Hmm.
ultimately, like, some of that's going to depend on your workload, right? Like, if you're using legacy CUR when you're early in your migration journey and you turn on CUR 2.0 when you've tripled your footprint on AWS, like obviously that's going to be a larger report because there's more usage that's involved there. But if we're really just comparing apples to apples, because of that selection and the nested columns, generally speaking, I see CUR 2.0 be smaller and therefore smaller in cost. With that said, like the cost is pretty minimal because we're storing a report in S3 and
Yeah,
it's
the
not anything
difference, yeah,
massive.
right, right. The
Go on.
difference is minimal, although I want to add that uh, when you use vendors like, so let's take legacy CUR like Savannah you mentioned already. If you use it you get it, if you don't use it you don't even get it as part of the CUR in the first
Mhm.
place, right? So
Yeah.
let's assume you don't use something and then it's not there, that's your legacy CUR. Whereas in CUR 2.0, say you use Vantage or Flexera, Cloud Health, whoever to read, and they want all the columns, right? So whether you use it or not, because that's the way they expect your CUR to be for them to process, then you pretty much lose this idea of deselecting columns that you don't need because they're going to need all of that. In that case, it might actually make a difference because in both cases, you're not using something. With legacy, you didn't even get it as part of CUR, but in CUR 2.0, you're actually getting it. So that
Okay.
might mean the difference.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it, I mean, it all comes back to that configuration, right? I think
Right.
with CUR 2.0, like you just have more levers to pull and push.
Hmm.
Um, ooh, I'll maybe take this one in a different direction. Is there a common feature request across the AWS customers? How are you guys thinking about the future of the tool? In general, like we can't talk about upcoming features that aren't like fully baked and ready to be released to the world. But I think what we can do is maybe think about like the ideal experience and some of the like different data export functionality that we talked about earlier. So I know like with split cost allocation, it's like a more enhanced CUR. Deepa, if you think about like an ideal customer use case for all of these reports, and if you put yourself in the like FinOps persona hat, how would you think about like developing a CUR strategy? Sorry if that's a big
It's
question.
yeah, is there an ideal use case, right? Every use case is important depending on the persona. Um, I would say the our resource level granularity uh, has been really helpful for customers to understand how their resources are utilized and all of that. Um, I I wish I could talk more about SCAD, but it's a different product in itself when you actually use it. So I'd rather not get deep into how that is used. But I think split cost allocation is a very, very important piece of data that, depending on the persona, finance persona, they would really need it. So hourly granularity with resource ID. Granularity, I'm using the word a lot. um, is something that most people want. Although I would say that people that are used to our classic reports like ECSV and all of that, Um,
Sorry.
yeah. um, Sometimes they just want service level. They don't
Mhm.
really like any other level of granularity below service because that serves their purpose. Anything more granular is just gonna get confusing, and for the stakeholder, their CFO, they need only at that rolled up level. So that's what they need. So it's very hard to talk about a super special use case and see
Mhm.
what the setup is going to be for CUR. But there's whole variety of it, and depending on the use case, a single CUR could actually answer all the questions. So I don't know how to answer that question
Yeah.
in a call like this.
I mean, I think you've actually kind of done it, right? Because we've talked through different like levels of granularity that people would want. And realistically speaking, like if you think about the data that you're after and who wants which level of granularity, it's more of a question of how are you going to dial up reports to support that,
Right.
right? So like if you have a high level stakeholder who just wants those cost optimization recommendations that we kind of demoed a little bit earlier. Maybe that's one report that you have in the data export space. But if you've got a set of stakeholders that have a bunch of EKS clusters that they're monitoring and they really need that like extra level of granularity, that's when we would turn on split cost allocation or enable SCAD, right? Like that gives you that slightly deeper level of granularity for that specific service. If you also have a set of stakeholders who don't necessarily need that level of granularity, but still want resource level data, you could enable both resource IDs and split cost allocation in the same cost and usage report and just pull different like levels basically, or ingest it into the cloud intelligence dashboards and kind of like spin up different things for different people. As you mentioned, like it is the product that we build on top of, right? It is that
Right.
large data set, the foundation. So it's up to you where you want to set that foundation in terms of granularity and then what you want to uh, stack on top of it. There we go.
Yeah.
Uh,
Also, some of these, I mean, more Athena categories. Yeah. Um, Definitely working on it. Um, in terms of granularity, if there is ever a row increase, like when you do resource level granularity is going to increase the row count. Same with SCAD. If there's ever a row increase, even 10 rows row increase out of your billion lines,
mhm,
um, we make sure every customer knows that this is going to do that. Like, columns, we give an option. If we add 10 different columns and we by default deselect it for you and then give you the option to select it, it's not going to break things. But if there are capabilities that we add that increases the row count, we make sure we do it with the customer's consent, which is why for resource ID and SCAD, we have that opt-in feature.
mhm. Yep. Yeah, I think that the opt-in is really powerful because like you can again like kind of control your data size a little bit based on the data that you need. We don't necessarily default to just giving you like the biggest report possible. To toss back up the we need more Athena core queries question for a minute. We do have a well architected labs workshop that's got a library of cost and usage report queries. If you're unfamiliar with it, definitely check it out. It's a good starting point. For like this is a purely selfish view, right? But for my purposes, what I usually do is I'll browse through there and use them as a starting point and then edit them according to like really what I'm drilling down into. So definitely love that resource. We are as cost layers asking for, we're always trying to add more and put more content and data pulling mechanisms out there into the world.
Cost layer is really slaying it on our side today.
We love you, cost layer. Thank you for being here. This is an interesting one. Is there a way that CUR integrates or reports on customer AI tooling and applications?
Uh,
So I've got like two thoughts about this. So if you're using AI products on AWS, so like Bedrock, any sort of machine learning, SageMaker, that will end up in your cost and usage report, just like everything else. Deepa, is there anything that you want to say about that, or any
the way
specific things you want to call out?
the way I understand this question is the way that the current integrates or reports on customer AI tooling. Oh, okay. Got it. Got it. I had understood it differently. I thought, can CUR be integrated with other AI tools after the export? That's not
Mm.
what is being meant. Okay, got it. I think, yeah, you're right.
We
It's
can
an
also.
evolving landscape, as you know. So, there is FinOps for AI for FinOps,
Mhm.
conversations constantly happening. So that space is rapidly evolving, and CUR will be locking step with all the developments on that front.
Yep. And I think to answer the first interpretation as well, um, we do have Q integration within Billing Console that launched kind of like an upgraded version over the summer that I've seen folks starting to use. I've also seen people do some creative things with their CUR data. I don't I don't think I've seen any customer like toss the entire CUR into an AI model yet, but I've seen people basically like take excerpts from it and then like toss it somewhere and say, "Hey, can you analyze this?" or like pull out trends based on like the result of a query that I've seen. Anything interesting that you've seen folks do there, Deepa?
Anything that we can do on, like, we think of Cost Explorer as a page where we can actually do that, because this, like I said, the source is the same for current Cost Explorer. So anything that you want to try, Cost Explorer is a good stage for us to try all of that. And there are some recent developments in Cost Explorer that our customers seem to like. So definitely watch that space for how we change things there.
Yeah, I think the month over month compare is really powerful there. I've seen people use that as like a good starting point before diving into the CUR as well. If you're not familiar with it, over the summer we launched a Cost Explorer month over month compare feature, so you can toggle back and forth from standard view to compare. And the comparison will kind of flag some of those trends that we see. Will show increase, decrease. I know I've spent a lot of time in Cost Explorer without the compare, trying to figure out what went down and what went up so that I can then go into the CUR and say, okay, which resource IDs did this, or let's pull some of this data and take a look at what tags are associated with it, and really go from there. So it's just a little bit faster, and I think that's the likely the direction that we're moving in general. So this is a good one to probably close it out. How difficult is it for me to migrate from my legacy CUR to CUR 2.0?
We have a migration guide. It should be part of, it's easy to find on our website too. Uh, the TAMs are really used to helping, hand-holding customers for this, so it is not very difficult. But I'm a product manager. I'm going to say this, but you should definitely talk to other people. We've not heard anyone say that is a challenge. One thing that I've heard people say, that I've had legacy code for so long,
Mm-hmm.
how do I stitch the data together? Because I need that cushion time, is something one of the customers said, but they were able to successfully do it without any issues.
Yeah, and as Deepa mentioned, like our technical account managers and AWS folks are very used to having these conversations. We've got that migration guide. We also have a lot of internal resources too. If you do not have a technical account manager, or if you have some other hyper specific questions, you can always reach out to us at costoptimization@amazon.com, and we can give you some support that way as well. That is the show email where we field some of those questions. So would love to get some feedback about your experience migrating from legacy CUR to CUR 2.0. I think folks are a little bit more nervous about it versus when they actually do it, it's a lot less painful than they expect. Ooh.
Yeah, change is hard. Migration is hard. If something happens with migration, like, all hell breaks loose. But if it's smooth, nobody notices. That's the
Yep.
nature of migration. But um, we haven't heard any complaints from customers who made the switch.
All right. I think this might be our last question. So let's think about it carefully. Do you have a favorite CUR column? I have a
Unblended
couple
cost.
favorites.
Unblended
Unblended
cost is my
cost.
favorite.
Yeah. Yep, that's the classic CUR column. What lives in unblended cost, Deepa, for folks who aren't familiar with that like unblended terminology?
Oh, on demand cost, like,
Mhm.
the actual cost that is incurred by this resource on demand. that is what shows up in unblended cost. And the reason it's my favorite is because there is also net unblended cost. It's after the discounts are applied. So this is really the true cost. If I have to, I mean, if you have savings plan and you have RI, there are other rows that you should be looking at. But after having conversation with the customer, even many customers, many of them are used to unblended cost as the place that they go to, which is why sometimes it's hard for them to look at another column when
Mhm.
they use a different product. So that is why it's my favorite.
Yep. Unblended cost. That's where I always start if I'm like summing top to bottom to figure out how much it costs. I actually have three for this.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I love public on demand cost. So if I'm calculating like how much an RI covered or saved me, and I want to just quick gut check on like one of those discounted usage lines and see what the public on demand cost is. Ditto any sort of savings plan covered usage. I love that one. It's a really quick and easy one to say, this is what I would have paid if I hadn't implemented any of those optimization mechanisms that we talk about in terms of commitment based discounting. I love product code. It's always there for me, line item product code. And then resource ID. Love resource ID.
You kind of cheated on this because it says a favorite CUR column, but yeah.
Okay. Deepa, you can't make me Sophie's Choice my CUR columns like this. Team line item type. Yeah. Oh, line item type.
Yes, line item type. Like
Also very
if
fun.
I could name more than one, I would have definitely chosen line item type.
Yeah. Yeah. Super useful. Lots of stuff in there that we like. Um, awesome. All right. So we are wrapping up almost at the top of the hour. Any last comments, questions, fun CUR trivia, anything that you want the people to know before we wrap it up?
Migrate to CUR 2.0. Set it up like someone beautifully suggested at the beginning. Definitely set it up. Legacy CUR is not going away in 2025. There is no date set, uh, but we want you to leverage CUR 2.0 and reap the benefits as we introduce more new additional capabilities there.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, give it a try. No harm in giving it a look and seeing what that's going to take for you. Usually lower impact than we'd expect. And thanks for tuning in today, Chat AWS.
Thank
Appreciate you
you.
guys. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.